أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الغريبين يا رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وسلم. We've been continuing with the topic of Ahlul Bayt, and last week we were talking about Imam Husain AS before Karbala. Basically, Imam Husain AS between the time that his brother Imam Husain AS is martyred until Karbala. So we're kind of in the middle of that still. Before I go further, but any questions from last time? No? Okay. So inshallah.
Can I clarify one doubt?
Yes.
Like just use speak. I didn't attend your last lecture, but just one.
Yes.
Hussein alayhi salam.
Ji.
We could say alayhi salam or we should say Razilallah.
Okay. So the question is about Hussein alayhi salam or radiallahu anhu.
Yeah.
So, alayhi salam means, salam be upon them. So for whomever salam came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that automatically becomes alayhi salam, which includes all of the prophets. Okay, so some people try to say, no, it's only for the prophets. Okay. But then you ask them, well, what do you say when you take the name of the mother of Isa alayhi salam? Maryam alayhi salam. Okay, Maryam alayhi salam is not a prophet, right? So that argument falls apart right away. Okay. Then we look at Allah's salam came for Bibi Khadija alayhi salam, but she also is a radiallahu anha because she's also sahabi. Radiallahu anha can also be used for people that are not sahabi. If you look at the meaning of the terms, radiallahu anha is the one who's Allah is pleased with. Okay, but so when we look at the household of Rasulullah, so some salam came for them. Outside of the household, salam came for Bibi Aisha Siddiqa alayhi salam or radiallahu anha. So it can be used there as well. In general, though, the way it's used by traditional Muslims is that radiallahu anha specifies the companions. Alayhi salam is used when we talk about the household because salam came upon them. And when we're talking about, like if I say Ali, radiallahu anhu, so if I'm talking about him in the context of him being sahabi, then I say radiallahu anhu. If I talk about him in the context of him being Ahlul Bayt, then I say alayhi salam. When I talk about him in the context in opposition to those who opposed him, then I say karamallahu wajh, because their saying would be that may Allah darken his face. Karamallah, which means may Allah brighten his face. So in opposition to that. So all three can be used. And so again, when we start, like when I'm talking about Imam Husain AS or Imam Hasan AS, I rarely talk about them in the context of Sahabi. I'm generally talking about them in the context of Ahlul Bayt. So that's why I use alayhi salam. It's interesting because if you look at say Bukhari. So Imam Bukhari, when he talks about the virtues or the fadilat of Bibi Fatima, salamullah alayha, he says Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. Okay, it's written in Arabic, Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. Yeah, alayhi salam, alayha salam. The interesting thing is that if you pick up an Urdu translation, they will say, a lot of them, not all of them, but most of them, will say Bibi Fatima radiallahu anha. Radiallahu anha is not the translation of alayhi salam. Okay? So why are you doing that? Other than to confuse the people. Okay? I mentioned this last time as well. Several years ago, we were in Pakistan. So my father was in Pakistan, and there was a masjid that's close to where we stay. And the imam of that masjid is the nephew of Taqi Usmani. Okay.
You heard of him, right?
So Taqi Usmani, yes, yeah. So who used to be Chief Justice in Pakistan? Taqi Usmani used to. Taqi Usmani's brother wrote Tafsir Uthmani. Okay, and I'll come to that point in a second too. How these people play with things. So the nephew is also PhD in Sharia. So he was giving a dars, so my father went just to see what he's talking about. So he was talking, and then someone asked the question about, I'm going to go the long way and then come back to the point, so don't lose me here, okay? So he asked him the question. Zubair Usmani is the person's name.
The nephew.
The nephew. So he asked him. So the person asked him. He says, we, people bring niyaz or fatiha of Bar Sab, to the house. So what should I do with it? So he tells them, just maybe give it to the animals, or give it to the masi. Okay. Because it's haram. Okay. So, and actually he was talking before that, the talk was about, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, فَذَكِّرْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ, remember the days of Allah. Or remind them of the days of Allah. And in that, when he's talking about, that verse, he's talking about, the day of Badr, the day of Uhud, the day of this, the day of that. He never mentioned the day of the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, all of these days came because of that day. And so, and if you look at the explanation that Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu, who is Tarjumanul Quran, this is the title Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him. And it's interesting why he gave him this title. People don't know that. One day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to relieve himself, and when he came back, the lota, the water vessel was full of water, so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could make wudu. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked who filled the water, and Ibn Abbas said, I did, and he was a young boy at that time. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, out of happiness, gives him the title of Tarjumanul Quran. For such a simple act, but that showed his love and anticipation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Ibn Abbas says that when you talk about the days of Allah, every day is the day of Allah, right? But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this, he's talking about those days in which either Allah's wrath descended or His mercy descended. Even though every day, every moment is His mercy, but there are moments when you can see it. It's something special. And Ibn Abbas says that the days of mercy are greater than the days of the wrath. The interesting thing is that in general, they're the same days. Because if you look at the day that Bani Israel is freed from Fir'aun, it's mercy for the people of Bani Israel, it's the wrath upon the people of Fir'aun. Same day. Okay. Same way, but if you look at the day that Rasulullah ﷺ is born, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, mercy to all of creation. So here on this day, all of creation showed joy, right? Even the animals are very happy, to the extent that when Shifa, who is the mother of Abdul Rahman bin Auf, who was a midwife at the time of the birth of Rasulullah, she was there. She says when she was walking outside the house, when she was leaving the house, she sees the donkeys hugging each other, and she recognized what they were saying. They knew what they were saying, and they were saying that the one who has come to give us all rights has arrived. All the previous prophets came with the rights of mankind, right? Or with the rights of the jinn kind, as Sulaiman al-Islam. But the one who came with the rights of all of creation is Rasulullah. So even they were joyous. The only one who's crying is, and we know that, you know. Okay. So my father asked him this. He says, you mentioned all of these days, but you didn't mention this. Okay. And then he I forgot. That was his explanation at the moment, because he didn't have an answer for that. He said, I forgot. Okay. Which is a common response from a lot of these people. So then he asked him, he says, the person asked about the food for the that people give niyaz for Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani Rahmatullah, for other awliya. You said, yeah, Fatiha. So you said, oh, this is haram, and that you just, you should give it to the Masi. Okay. Well, why are you giving haram food to the Masi? So he says, oh, most of them are Christian. He said, well, the one who comes to my house to our house is Muslim. She prays 5 times a day. Okay, so why are you going to give it to them? And how is, and
usually I kept the azan because my children should listen every time.
Yeah,
that's
because
good, that's
they
fine.
need to know it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's good.
So I'm just
Beautiful
wanted
too,
to
that
keep my speakers also at my home, every room.
MashaAllah.
Whenever in the room, they should hear it.
Yeah, definitely. Shaitan back
Yeah, it's near necessary.
Yeah. So Masi, of course, is the person that come, like in Pakistan and India, they come and clean the house or cook or whatever. So he said, oh, and this is what he explained. Oh, most of them are Christian, but again, why are you going to give haram food to them? And he says, what makes the food haram? So he says, oh, you sacrifice the animal on the name of Abdul Qadir Jilani. So my father says, look, have you ever been to one? He says, no. So the person himself who's saying it's haram, never been to one. My father, who all his life has been going and doing these things, he says, well, I do it, and all of this, and I've been to, thousands of them. And no one ever says, everyone when they slaughter the animal says, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. Right? No one says, oh, I'm slaughtering this. And even if they say that I'm slaughtering this for, like when you do Qurbani, right? Eid al-Adha. You say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar when you're slaughtering the animal, but the intention is
In the name of
whoever, right? So how does that, again, how does that make it haram?
Haram is a big thing.
Yeah, haram.
Yeah.
So he couldn't answer that question either. So then he says, oh, then class was over. He says, come with me, to his school. So he goes, and of course they have the big library, Sahih Bukhari. So my father pulls out Sahih Bukhari from there, and opens to, the virtues of Bibi Fatima. Salamullah alayha. And of course, in the Arabic, so it had the Arabic text on one side and it had the Urdu translation on the other side. And the Arabic text, it says, Bibi Fatima alayha salam. And in the Urdu translation, it says, Bibi Fatima radiyallahu anha. Anha, radiyallahu anha. Okay. So someone who's not reading the Arabic is not going to make that connection. Okay? And most people who it's translated for are not going to be reading the Arabic. Okay? So my father asked him, what about this? And again, no answer. Because he has no answer. Okay? These are ways that, these are things that where you entangle people in issues that are non-issues so that they can't focus on the issues that are real issues. Typical politics, right? So this is one of those things that and especially now these days, you go, and even here now, like we have over there, the names of
Ali Fatima.
Ali Fatima, and it says, Ayn alayhi salam, right? Okay, over here we have the names of, Khulafai Rashidin, the first Khulafai, yeah. Okay, it says, and there, radiallahu anhu. Okay. And here, like with Ali radiallahu over there, it says alayhi salam. With Ali radiallahu over here, it says radiallahu, because here it's mentioned in that context. There it's mentioned in that context. Okay? So we've had people come here, walk in, they looked at that, and they walked out, said, oh, Shia Masjid.
Exactly. What we are fed in is, actually now Sheikh has very clearly explained it. Now in Hyderabad when you go, we are fed with saying that no, the Shia people says alayhi salam for Hazrat Ali and Fatima and again Hussein.
Yeah.
And we as a Sunni Muslim, we shouldn't say that. We are being fed like this.
Yes.
So that's the reason I was curious to ask.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. And so my question to those people who say, oh, the Shia say this, I ask them, well, is Imam Bukhari Shia? If this is your argument, then is Imam Bukhari Shia? Okay. And if you claim he's Shia, then why are you quoting his hadith? Okay. And the real thing is, though, that the people that claim this are in actuality Khawarij. Okay. And, Khawarij, I can get into the long details of who they are. But they were given the name of Khawarij by Rasulullah himself, because he said the people will come like this. Okay. And this is a hadith that we've gone over multiple times, because these are hadiths that exist in Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmizi, Nisa'i, Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, so all of Sahih Sitta. They also exist in Musnad Ahmad, Abu Ya'la, Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, and like multiple books of hadith talk about the Khawarij. The problem is these days, people have limited things to, okay, Shia and Sunni. Okay, and they lump everybody who's not Shia into Sunni. The problem is that not everybody who claims to be Sunni is actually Sunni. Because for the Khawarij, Rasulullah ﷺ is telling the companions, and I don't know if you know the background to this. Okay, so I'll go over the background, inshallah. Get everybody on the same page. Battle of Hunain. Okay, so Battle of Hunain takes place, and in the Battle of Hunain you have more spoils of war that come into the control of the Muslims than any other battle. Okay, and these spoils include 6,000 prisoners of war, 24,000 camels, 40,000 goats and sheep, 4,000 ounces of silver, gold separately, armor separately, all of these things. So when it comes time, now amongst the captives, because if you know the Battle of Hunain was fought against the tribes, the Arab tribes that surrounded Mecca, which were the same tribes that the Meccan children were sent to be nursed for the first 2 to 3 years. Okay. So this includes Banu Sa'd, Halima Sa'diya. She is one of the captives in this. Her daughter, who is the nurse sister of Rasulullah ﷺ, is one of the captives in this. And so after the battle, I'm going to make things short, but still long. After the battle, some of the people from these clans came to Rasulullah ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, your mother, meaning Bibi Halima, and your sister are amongst the captives. Even if they weren't, we would expect much good from you. So he says to them, come tomorrow, before everyone, and present your case, and I will do what I can do. Okay. So the next day, when the decision is being made how the captives are to be distributed, so they come, and they say, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, this is the situation, we expect much good from you. So Rasulullah ﷺ says that I free the captives that are to come on behalf of, or that go to or I guess belong to or come into the custody of those from Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib. So I free them. So when the Muhajir, they see this, they say, Ya Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, out of our love for you, we free those captives that come into our custody. The Ansar stand up and say, Ya Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we free the captives that come into our custody for your love. Various other clans stand up and do the same thing. The people of Najd, so Najd is Eastern Arabia. Hijaz, of course, is Makkah, Medina, Ta'if, and, Western Arabia is Hijaz. Najd, the center of Najd is Riyadh, modern day Riyadh. This is Najd. And in Bukhari, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam refused to pray for Najd. Because this is a place of fitna, of earthquakes, and qarna shaitan. Qarn can mean horn, and it also means the era. So the era of shaitan will rise from here. So the people of Najd, one of them said, one of the clans from Najd said, also we free them. Okay. The other people of Najd said, no, we don't free our captives. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam makes a deal with them that in the next battles you will be given like 5 or 6 times more. And then they say, okay, now we free them. So they wanted money. The person who freed them, because of his love for, even though he's from Najd, but because of his love for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he frees the people without asking for anything in compensation. His people rebuked him. Why'd you do this? Okay. Now when we look at the rest of the spoils of war, so this is when you have, so actually Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is sitting there before distributing anything. And Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu, who had just become Muslim, Fatih Makkah. So Hunayn takes place like right after Makkah, Fatih Makkah. So Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu, who's just become Muslim, he comes to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he smiles at him, and he says that you have become the richest man in Arabia. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam smiles back at him and says, what do you want from this? And he says, whatever you give. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says to Bilal, most people don't understand or know this. Everybody knows Bilal is the mu'adhin of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was also the treasurer of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says to Bilal, he says, give him 100 camels and 40 ounces of silver. So when Abu Sufyan sees this generosity, he says, well, what about my son Yazid? His older son was named Yazid. This is different Yazid than, so his older son. He says, what about my son Yazid? So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, give him the same. And then he says, what about my son Muawiyah? So he says, give him the same. Safwan bin Umayyah, who was the son of Umayyah bin Khalaf, who was one of the staunchest enemies of Islam. He's the one he was the owner of Bilal before Abu Bakr freed Bilal. So he's the one who was torturing Bilal, with the help of all the others. So Umayyah was killed in Badr. Safwan is his son. Safwan did not accept Islam immediately after Fatih Makkah. Safwan was a connoisseur of armor. Like people collect knives and people collect guns. He collected armor. So when they were leaving for the battle, there was a shortage of armor, so Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam rented 100 suits of armor from him. He came along because he wanted to make sure that he was repaid. So when he's there, he starts, and you can imagine all of this, 24,000 camels, 40,000 sheep and goats. You have a huge piece of land that you're keeping all of this on. So Safwan keeps looking at the property. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sees him looking at the property and asks him, he says, do you like this?
And he's not Muslim yet.
He's not Muslim yet. He said, yes. He said, it's yours. And this is when Safwan becomes radiallahu anhu. Because he realizes, because until now, he still was of that mindset that, you know, Rasulullah is doing all of these things, you know, he's building his kingdom. Kings don't give like this, and he realizes this. So now he becomes Muslim. Okay. I'm blanking on the name who had orchestrated the conglomeration of all of these tribes. Malik, I forget his whole name. He's the one who brought this army against Rasulullah. When he saw that the army was losing, he ran off into the mountains. Rasulullah has word sent to him that come to me, and everything that has been taken from you will be given back to you, plus another 100 camels. There was no stipulation of him becoming Muslim or anything else, just come to me. So he comes. Rasulullah gives him everything that had been taken from him, plus 100 camels on top. And then he also becomes Muslim. All right. So all of this special treatment for all of these people, most of whom had just become Muslim. All right. Some of them, like I said, hadn't even become Muslim. All right. So now whatever is left, I mean, you think about this, okay, 24,000 camels, 100 of them to Abu Sufyan, 100 of them to his son, 100 of them to his other son, 100 of them to the general who brought these armies against him. Okay. And then, you know, various other people who are being given various large gifts. I'm going to sidetrack here. This is also when the word spreads very rapidly that Muhammad he gives in such a manner that he's not afraid of becoming poor. You know, because a king, when he gives, he's always looking behind, right? What do I have left? You know, so they give, when they give, they count. Rasulullah gives. So when this word spreads, you have people coming from everywhere. Ya Rasulullah, I need this, I need that, I need, you know. So this one Bedouin, he comes. And he says to Rasulullah, he says, Ya Rasulullah, I need you to fulfill my needs. The Jamal of Rasulullah shifts very quickly to that Jalal. And immediately Rasulullah asks him, he says, ask whatever you want and it will be given to you. Ali is the witness to this. And he's standing there and he says, Ali says that when I heard this and I saw the condition of Rasulullah, I was so envious of this man because I was sure that he would ask for this, for everything in this world and the next, and it would all be given to him.
He knew that.
Because Ali knows Rasulullah, and he knows the authority with which Rasulullah is sent. So when Rasulullah says this, the man says to him, he says, I need 4 camels, a few sheep, and this and this and this. And now that Jalal comes back to the Jamal, and Rasulullah simply looks at him and says to him, he says, you have asked me for less than what the old woman asked from Musa a.s. And Ali says, you know, the guy missed out. Right? So Rasulullah says to him, go and give him what he wants. So now the question comes, what did the old woman ask from Musa a.s.? And why did Rasulullah say this? That you asked me for less than what she asked. So the story of the old woman asking for Musa a.s. is that when the order comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Musa a.s. to leave Misr with Bani Israel, so Yusuf al-Islam, of course, you know, as we know the story, or I hate using the term story because story can be something false as well. We know the incident. You know, Yusuf al-Islam becomes the leader, in charge of Misr. He was buried there. But he had commanded Bani Israel that if Bani Israel is ever to leave Misr, which also tells us he knew that Bani Israel is going to leave Misr, that his body should be taken with them. So they buried him. When they buried him on the edge of the Nile. And so when Musa al-Islam is commanded to leave, he is also commanded to take the body of Yusuf al-Islam. No one knows, because it's been so long, no one remembered where Yusuf al-Islam had been buried, except for this one old woman. Here, an important point to note. There is no ummati who knows more than the Nabi. Musa al-Islam knows, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded him to go and ask the old woman, because he wants to show the maqam and the understanding of the old woman. Just like when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would ask the companion certain things, because he wanted to show everybody the understanding of this companion.
Not because.
Yeah. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking Musa al-Islam, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينَكَ يَا Musa, what is in your right hand, O Musa? It's not because he doesn't know. He knows, but he wants to expound on this so that everybody else understands. Right? It's like your wife is a teacher. Your wife asks the kids, something, and these days the kid will literally say, don't you know? Right? But she's not asking them because she doesn't know. She's asking them, sometimes she's asking them to see if they know, but sometimes she's asking them because she likes a certain student and she likes the way they explain certain things. There are various reasons for asking. So Musa al-Islam is commanded to ask her. So when he comes to ask her, she says, what will you give me for this information? Information's not free. What will you give me? So Musa al-Islam says, well, I've been commanded to ask you, so whatever you want. She says, fine. She says, I want to be in Jannah. But not just any part of Jannah. I want to be in Jannah where you will be in Jannah. So Musa al-Islam says, well, how can I do this? Because the Anbiya, they have their ranks and then everybody else, and everybody according to their ranks in Jannah. So Musa al-Islam says, give me some time. So now he says to Allah, he says, Ya Allah, this is what she's asking. How do I give it to her? So Allah subhanahu says, give it to her. He says, well, Musa al-Islam says, well, the ranks of the Anbiya. And he says, along with the Anbiya will be those who serve them, will be those who are with them, and those who love them. Which brings me the hadith of Rasulullah, which remind me to bring that one up, of the love of Rasulullah min Ahlul Bayt, okay, in case I forget later. So he says, give it to her. So Musa al-Islam says to her, I give it to you. This is the authority Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the messengers with. So this is what Rasulullah is referring to when he says that you have asked me for less than what the old woman asked from Musa al-Islam. Because it was his right that he should have been asked for more. Because he is Sayyidul Anbiya, right? If I need some money and I go to a guy that I know he only has $10,000, I'm not going to ask for $10,000. I'm going to ask for, what he can give me. If I know, okay, this guy doesn't have a lot, but I'm in need, so I'm going to say, well, can you give me $1? Right? But this guy, I know this guy, he's a millionaire. I'm not going to go and ask him for $1. I'm going to ask him, can you give me $100 or something, right? So the higher the status, the more deserving they are of being asked for more. And so this is what happens here. So now coming back to what I started with. So after, Rasulullah gives all these, and this actually opens up so many other incidences of what the Ansar said and all these other things, which gets into a totally, kind of shifts the topic, but I'm going to stick with, and try to stick as much as I can with what I want to at this point, just to explain the Khawarij. So this is when along with, now when he starts distributing amongst their soldiers, he distributes to them, in accordance with, like the horsemen cavalry get 2 shares, regular person gets this share, and all of these. Okay. So they're not getting these extravagant gifts like these other people got. Most of these are the same people who came with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to conquer Makkah. Okay. Because you had 10,000 of those soldiers, you only had 2,000 extra from Makkah. So in Hunayn you had 12,000 soldiers. Okay. 10,000 original who came to conquer Makkah, and then 2,000 additional from Makkah after Fatih Makkah. Okay. So one of them was Zul Khuwaisra. So Zul Khuwaisra at-Tamimi al-Najdi. So he's from the tribe of Banu Tamim, from the area of Najd. So he came with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to conquer Makkah. He felt cheated because he's seeing all these people who got these extravagant gifts, and he only gets a certain portion. So he comes, when he's given his portion of the shares of the spoils of war, he comes to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he says to him, Ya Muhammad. He doesn't even say Ya Rasulullah. He says, Ya Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, do justice. If I say to someone, do justice, or someone says to me, do justice, they have the right to say that to me, because it is possible that I can be unjust. Even though I may not be unjust in what they're saying to justice in, but it's possible I can be unjust. Just like when the man said to Umar radiyallahu, Ittaqullah, fear Allah. And the other people there are saying, oh, this is the Khalif, Amir al-Mu'mineen, what are you saying? And Umar radiyallahu says, no, this is his right, and it is an obligation for him to say this to me. Why? Because Umar radiyallahu could be in a condition where he doesn't fear Allah. It's possible. Right? It is impossible for Rasulullah to do injustice. And for him to say do justice is implying that he can do injustice. Rasulullah responds to him and says to him that if I don't do justice, then who can do justice? And if I don't do justice, then all of you will be destroyed. So when Rasulullah responds to him in this manner, he turns around, turns his back on Rasulullah and walks away. Umar radiyallahu is there, Ali radiyallahu is there, and according to some narrations, probably Khalid bin Walid radiyallahu is there. And there are other companions that are there. Umar is Umar. So Umar radiyallahu takes out his sword, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, give me permission. Rasulullah says no, because if you do this, then the people will say that Muhammad kills his own. Not that he's not deserving of this, but this is what the people, and these are people that have just become Muslim, so now you're going to create issues. This is the same reason why he didn't make the Kaaba back to the form of Ibrahim al-Islam. He left the Kaaba the way it was when Quraysh rebuilt it, because they made changes to it. Because he said to Aisha, and he says that if your people weren't new to Islam, then I would change it back to the way Ibrahim al-Islam built it. Because it would create confusion. So this is what he says. He says no, because people will start saying this. And then he says to them, he says, take a good look at him. And they describe him, sunken in eyes, big, thick beard, shaved head. People don't understand why shaved head. Because he just came from Umrah. Fatih Makkah, they have the opportunity, let's make Umrah. And there are other descriptions of him as well, which I won't go into right now. He says, take a good look at him. Because from him, and those who associate with him, will come a people who will recite the Quran in such a way that you will be ashamed of your recitation. constantly reciting, perfect recitation. And he's saying this not to me and you. He's saying this to Umar bin Khattab, who is the son of Khattab. Umar is one of the few Arabs who could pronounce the Dad. Dad is the most difficult letter in the Arabic alphabet for even the native speakers to pronounce. He could pronounce the Dad from both sides of his mouth. He's saying this to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu, who is the master of the recitation of the Quran. He's telling them, you will be ashamed of your recitation. But then he says, but it will not get below their collarbones. And they will think that on the day of judgment it will be a witness for them, but in reality it will be a witness against them. But he doesn't stop here. And if you look at this hadith in Sahih Muslim, which is hadith number 2333, the beginning is different, but Ali says, Rasulullah said, told me that a people from this nation will come and they will be this, and he gives the descriptions. This is what I'm going into now. But again, these narrations are in pretty much all the more commonly known books of hadith. Let me put it that way. He says, and your salat will seem insignificant to their salat, and your fasting will seem insignificant to their fasting. But they will go through Islam like an arrow through its prey. And if you ever shot an arrow, when it goes through the prey, it doesn't come back, which literally means that they will not be given the opportunity to make tawbah. They will go through Islam. Islam is the median way. This way is wrong, this way is wrong. If I go through it, I've exited from one side to the other side, I'm no longer in Islam. But again, the arrow doesn't come back. Okay. But he doesn't stop there. That would be enough to understand, these people have left the religion in reality. He says, if you look at the arrow, there will be no blood on the tip, there will be no blood on the shaft, and there will be no blood on the feathers, on the end. Which means that, they went through Islam, because when you shoot an animal with an arrow, and the arrow goes through it, when you get the arrow on the other side, it has blood on it. He said there will be no blood. Which means that even though they in appearance will seem so righteous and pious and dignified, but they in reality will attain nothing from the religion. Not even a drop of blood from the religion. So and then also in the hadith in Sahih Muslim, he doesn't even stop here. He says, and if the people knew the reward that I would give to them for fighting against such a people, they would think that one action of theirs is enough to attain paradise. And this is where we have fallen short, that these people run their mouths and talk all this fitna and talk all this nonsense against Rasulullah, and we are silent. Oh no, I don't want to create a scene. I don't want to create fitna. These are the fitna. And again, I'm not mentioning anything from any hadith that even they, because these are the same people who say, oh, Bukhari and Muslim, Bukhari and Muslim, Bukhari and Muslim. Well, this is in Bukhari and Muslim.
They never quote.
But they never quote this.
They never tell you this.
Because it exposes them. And then in the hadith in Sahih Muslim, it goes on to talking about the Battle of Nahwan, where and it doesn't mention Nahwan by name in that, but we know it's the Battle of Nahwan because the Rasulullah says to Ali, and you will fight against them. And in the battle, not even 10 of your men will be martyred, and not even 10 of them will survive. And after that battle, the people came to Ali and says, oh, you have killed all of the Khawarij. He says, no. He says, they are in the loins of men, in the wombs of women, and they will be here until the day of judgment. Okay. So now the question comes, why? Why such a major condemning? That Rasul, and the term Khawarij comes because Kharaja, Rasulullah, they will exit. So this is where the term comes from. What did they do that even though they are alive, they still can't re-enter Islam? Because normally, you know, we sin all the time. Right? Yet the door of repentance is always open. Even someone who commits shirk, until his last breath, he can make tawbah. If he doesn't make tawbah, there's no forgiveness in the hereafter. But for these people, there is no tawbah. Why? What did Zul Khuwaisra do? And all of these others didn't even do what he did. They simply supported him. He says those from him and who associate with him. What is that? Why is that even association such a great big deal? Because he knew who Rasulullah ﷺ was and was still disrespectful to him. He simply implied that Rasulullah ﷺ could be unjust. So those who these days claim that, oh, Rasulullah ﷺ is dead and gone and can't do anything for you, that claim is worse than what Zul Khuwaisra did. Those who today claim Rasulullah ﷺ didn't know what was behind his back or on the other side of the wall, is that not disrespectful to Rasulullah ﷺ? Those who make all of these claims, you know, that, oh, you know, don't do ghulu, don't do excess in praising Rasulullah ﷺ. You know, they quote half of a hadith. You know, just like the ones who say, oh, don't stand for him. They quote half the hadith. The hadith is, Rasulullah said, do not praise me in excess as the Christians praised Isa alayhi salam. You know, this is a, you know, like, don't do this like this. And the easiest example that I keep giving when I talk about this is, you know, like when my son was little, you know, he was eating cereal on the dastakhan, and some of it fell off onto the dastakhan. So he gets down on all fours and he's eating it like this. And he says to me, oh, I'm eating the cereal like a goat. So I told him, I said, don't eat the cereal like a goat. Did I tell him don't eat the cereal? No. I told him don't eat the cereal a certain way. I'm not telling him don't eat the cereal. I'm telling him eat the cereal, but don't eat it that way, right? Here, Rasulullah says, don't praise me in excess like the Christians did to Isa alayhi salam. How did the Christians praise Isa alayhi salam? They made him God or son of God, or they gave him divinity. Which Muslim gives Rasulullah divinity? No one. Everyone says Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I can only praise someone in excess if I know their limitations. Right? I mean, that's the only way. If I know the limitations, then I can say, oh, you know, this guy, you know, like someone has a master's degree, and I say, oh, you know, this guy's a PhD. Okay? When he's not. What are the limits of praising Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? None other than I don't make him a partner of Allah, or make him Allah, or divinity, or whatever. No Muslim does that. Anything else, any other praise I give him is not enough. It falls short, period. So, you know, so just because someone recites the Quran very well, just because they make a lot of salat, just because they fast all the time, means absolutely nothing if their aqeedah, if their love for Rasulullah is not proper. And love here doesn't simply mean doing the sunnah. Zul Khuwaisra was doing the sunnah. It's your attitude. You know, Fir'aun had a beard. Abu Jahl had a beard. All right. It's the attitude. Coming back to what I said for you to remind me, which alhamdulillah I remembered this time. Okay.
Did you remember?
You know, the story of Musa alayhi salam and the old woman, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us all that opportunity. He says that whoever loves me and loves Hassan and Hussein and loves their parents will be with us in Jannah. Alright. You know, I can make salat, you know, and do all of these other things and, you know, try to get a higher position in Jannah. You know, because entering Jannah is based on your aqidah. Your levels in Jannah, that's where some amal come in, the actions come in. But nothing, there is no action that will get me to that level of Jannah other than the love of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his Ahlul Bayt. That love will get me to that level of Jannah. And if I fall short in that love, then it may not get me Jannah at all. Hadith is in Mustadrak of Hakim. And if you know Mustadrak is a collection of hadiths which Imam Hakim compiled, which have the same criteria that was used by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So you have the same narrators that you have in Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. Okay. And there is a hadith in there where Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talks about a man who in the condition of fasting is making salat between the door of the Kaaba and Maqam Ibrahim. And he dies in the condition of sajda. And he goes directly to hell. Because in his heart is the animosity or the hatred of Ahlul Bayt. We've talked about this a few weeks ago. I mean, literally, the plan to kill Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu Wajh was literally made in the shade of the Kaaba. Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim, along with his compadres, was sitting there in the shade of the Kaaba making the plan. You know, they weren't in some, you know, MI6 office in London or somewhere. They were literally sitting there in the shade of the Kaaba making the plan to kill Ali radiallahu anhu. Which also tells us that they were making salat right there too. This gets to the fact that, you know, and we know the hadith, but most people only know half of this hadith as well. Because when we look at Imam Bukhari, rahmatullahi alayhi, there are many hadiths that he didn't quote completely, and there was a reason for that. Because of the political situation, he knew that if he did that, he would be killed or his writings would be destroyed. So he had to insert things in certain ways that didn't get him killed or his writings destroyed. People don't understand, and we've talked about this before when we were talking about hadith in general. You know, there's always the leadership, other than the Khilafah, which ended with Imam Husain AS, there's always been opposition to the truth. And this is one interesting thing. You know, we are all bound to follow the truth. And I'll ask the question, who is the truth bound to follow? Well, I mean, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But who is the truth bound to follow? We, all of the followers of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, are bound to follow the truth. We are ordered to follow the truth. It's our choice whether we follow it or don't follow it, right? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and the hadith is in Tirmizi, he said that, "Oh Allah, make the truth go whichever way Ali goes." So the truth is bound to follow Ali. Whichever way he goes, that is the truth. And we've talked about this before, not in this sense, or not in these terms, but, for those who've been coming, or been listening, or watching, or whatever. So we see this, we're bound to follow the truth. The truth is bound to follow Ali. And my mind just went blank. Kind of shifted thoughts there. But so when we see those who are, I guess, wishy-washy about Ahlul Bayt, when we see those who try to define Sunnah as simply keeping a beard and having a tasbih in the hand or putting on a little cloak or whatever. Again, the hypocrites used to do all of this, but it didn't matter. That connection of love is what separates Iman from disbelief. And again, love is not, okay, simply I'm going to do these things. It's the attitude I have for him. And if I love Rasulullah, then I love the ones that he loves. And we know that his love for Ahlul Bayt. And then we know the love of Ahlul Bayt for the Sahaba. As we said before, there was no one who defended the Sahaba of Rasulullah more than the Ahlul Bayt. And again, that gets into a lot of other details that some of which we've gone over in the past, and some of which we will cover as we keep moving forward and other issues come up. So I know I'm missing some things, but any questions so far?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Right, precisely.
So let's kind of get back to Imam Husain AS. So last week we got to the point where Muawiyah radiallahu anhu passes away. So 22nd of Rajab. So Yazid assumes the throne. And assumes the throne, or rather takes the throne, is more appropriate than he has any, because he has no legitimacy. And as I mentioned last week, one point is that Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, in the agreement that he made with Imam Husain Islam, did not have a right to name anyone as his successor. Political situations were such, that he went ahead and did it anyway. However, as we mentioned, and this is one of those points who the lovers of Yazid never mentioned, and the haters of the Sahaba never mentioned, because it changes perspectives. That on his deathbed, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu withdrew the nomination of Yazid. And of course, we also mentioned, he told the people how to bury him with the sheet of Rasulullah and the blessed hair of Rasulullah in his mouth and the nail clippings in his eyes of Rasulullah. So he ordered them, this is how you're supposed to bury me. So for those who have issues with tabarrukat or the relics of the prophets and the awliyaullah, they also never bring this up. But the thing is that if they bring up this issue of him withdrawing the nomination, those who are cursing Muawiyah, it becomes harder to do that. And those who are praising Yazid, it takes away any legitimacy that he has, even though he had no legitimacy even before this. So when this happens, Yazid knew that there were 4 people who stood in his way for ultimate control. And those 4, as we mentioned before, because Abdul Rahman bin Abu Bakr has already been martyred, just a year before, or 4 years before. Okay. Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, she passed away a couple of years before this. At this time, the only living wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Bibi Salma radiallahu anha. Okay. So Yazid knows that four people, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and Abdullah ibn Zubair radiallahu anhum, and Imam Husain AS. So these four are in the way of him achieving complete control, because the people of Hijaz have already said that they won't give him allegiance unless these give him allegiance. The people of Kufa he wasn't worried about, because he would take care of them militarily anyway. But bringing a military into Medina Munawwara right away would be an issue. He would do it later, but doing it right now would create some issues.
It wouldn't look good.
Yeah, it wouldn't look good. Not that he didn't care, not that he had any morals that, oh, he's not going to do it. It's just, it doesn't look good for him. And then there might be other issues that come up from that. So he immediately, sends word to all of the governors that, father has died, he is the king now, so everybody needs to give him allegiance. He also sends word to Medina Munawwara, and with a messenger. So at this time, in Medina Munawwara, you have three people, three of the four. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu is in Makkah. The other three, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Zubair, and Imam Husain AS. So these three are in Medina Munawwara. And so one point that's related to what you had asked, that's also important to understand here. The governors of Medina are not decent people. We've talked about Marwan. So Marwan, at this immediate time, Marwan is not the governor. He got removed. He would have issues with the hierarchy. He would get removed, and then they would bring him back. And so this time is one of those removal times. But he's still there, in the condition of a counselor or an advisor. Okay. Marwan is the cousin of Uthman. He is the actual son-in-law of Uthman. He is in reality the cause of the martyrdom of Uthman. He is also the one who couldn't open his mouth without cursing Ali. Part of the Jummah khutbah was to curse Ali. Part of the Eid khutbah was to curse Ali. Which is why the people, and these hadiths are in Bukhari and Muslim, the people would not listen to his khutbah. And that's why he changed the Eid khutbah to make it before the salat and not after the salat, because after the salat everybody would leave and not listen to his khutbah. So he said, no, I'm changing it. And when the companions asked him, he said, oh, that was the old way, this is the new way, the better way. So he's calling the sunnah of Rasulullah, and they said the sunnah of Rasulullah is to make the khutbah after the salat. He said, oh, that's the old way, this is the better way. And people still say, oh no, he's Jannati and he's Muslim and he's this and he's that. Yeah. So when the messenger arrives in Medina, it's late at night. He comes to the governor, who at this time is Walid bin Uqba. So he's Walid bin Uqba.
Okay.
Yeah. He is he's also a cousin of all of these from Banu Umayyah. He was somewhat decent, or he was. So when the message arrives, the message is basically, that these people are to be called into the court and they are to give allegiance to Yazid immediately. And if they refuse, and we'll get to the if they refuse part, because a lot of people deny that if they refuse, but it's obvious from the conversation that takes place. So, Walid sends a man to go and call them. And of course, he finds them in the masjid, sitting and talking amongst themselves. And he tells them that word has come, that a message has come, that the governor wants to see y'all immediately. So they tell the messengers to go, and we'll be there in a little while. You go. And so they look at each other, and they look at each other and they know. They said, why is the governor calling us at this time at night? This is well after Isha Salat. They said, why is he calling us now? And they say, Muawiyah must have passed away, and that means Yazid is taking the throne. So Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Zubair get up. They go to their homes, get their families, go to Makkah. Because they know they're not sticking around. Imam Husain AS, he gets up, he goes to his house, he tells the family members there, look, this is what's going on. I'm going to go to the governor, and we'll have a discussion. So along with him comes his brothers. So these are the sons of Ali radiallahu anhu, but not the sons of Fatima alayhi salam. So his half brothers, which included Abbas, who will be his flag bearer in Karbala, as well as some of his other half brothers. Abbas is interesting because Abbas Alamdar, his face is exactly like the face of Ali radiallahu anhu, but he's a huge man. Ali radiallahu anhu was short amongst the Arabs. Abbas is more in line with, his body is more in line with that, what we think of Umar radiallahu anhu. So when they get to the governor house, Imam Husain AS says, look, I'm going in, y'all stay here at the door. If you hear loud conversation going on, then you come in. So Imam Husain AS, he walks in, and Walid says to him, he says, I've received word, Muawiyah has passed away, so he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Imam Husain AS says this. And then he says, and Yazid has become the king, and my orders are that you are to give him allegiance immediately. So Imam Husain AS says, look, we are the people of Ahlul Bayt. We don't give allegiance like this. If I'm going to give allegiance, we give it openly. We don't hide things. We are people who deal with things openly. So, we'll see. When tomorrow comes, then we'll see.
No promise.
Yeah. So, no promise. No promise where I'll be. Nothing. He said, when tomorrow comes, we'll see. So he starts to leave. And as he's leaving, Marwan is there. So Marwan says to Yazid, he says, you know what the orders are? To Walid. To Walid. He says, you know what the orders are? And, so Walid says, this is Hussein. This is the grandson of Rasulullah. So I'm not doing anything to him. So Marwan then insists. And then Marwan, he says, you know the orders, and he literally says, to kill him. And Imam Husain Islam turns around, and now in a loud voice, he says, what are you going to kill me? Who can kill me? Are you going to kill me? And, the conversation gets loud, and this is when the brothers come into the room. And Abbas, the massive man that he is, he comes first. And he says, what's going on? And you can imagine this massive man sitting in the room or walking into the room, and everybody's okay. So Imam Husain Islam calms him down and looks at Walid, and he says, we are leaving, and we will see. And they walk out. And so now, he tells the family, he says, go home and get things ready. He goes to the Rawda of Rasulullah. And we can't imagine, the conversation that he's having with Rasulullah. We know parts of it. And he's saying to Rasulullah, he says, Ya Rasulullah, he says, they will not allow me to stay here. Because he knows what they can do. When there is no iman in the heart, someone devoid of guidance can do anything. He says, they will not allow me to stay here. And even though, I don't want to leave, and he says salam and his farewells. And then he goes from there to Jannatul Baqi. And he has a conversation with his mother and his brother, who are buried there side by side. And then eventually he makes his way to the house, and that night they leave for Makkah. One of his daughters, who's Fatima bint Husain, Islam, she does not go with them, but she's also there are a lot of people that confuse ages, and they try to make ages a lot younger than they were. She's already married to the son of Imam Husain AS, Hassan Muthanna radiallahu anhu. The reason I'm going to end with this, because a lot of people bring these issues up, and I will cover them again later as well. Is, well, why wasn't so and so there in Karbala? Why wasn't so and so, and why wasn't this and this? They were given certain orders to fulfill, not because they didn't want to be there, because they wanted to be there. And this is just like when Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi wanted to be in the army of Imam Zayd. But Imam Zayd is the one who told him, no, you can't. You got to go and continue this process of learning and teaching. He wanted to be one of the martyrs alongside with Imam Zayd. He said, no. So the same thing here. There's certain things that need to continue on, and those things were being set up so that Islam would survive in its real form, and that the Ummah would know what Islam really is. And so this is why. So this is when, just at night, they pick up and they leave and head to Makkah. And then, even though the companions, many of the companions didn't understand why he's doing what he's doing, they would understand later on. But at that moment, they didn't understand. That's why you have, all of these conversations going on. And people use part of these conversations to try to make it sound like, they make the conversations make it sound like that the companions were against Imam Husain AS doing what he did. They weren't against it. They just knew, they were afraid of the consequences of it. No one ever told him what you're doing is wrong, because they knew what he's doing is right.
And he knows what he's doing.
And he knows what he's doing is right. I mean, again, these are the people in whose house the Quran was revealed. These are the people for whom, in Sahih Muslim, Rasulullah says that the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt will never be separated. This is the month of the Quran. And we think that we can understand the Quran without knowing Ahlul Bayt. And this is why the Ummah is in the condition that it's in now. This is why what is going on in Palestine can happen now. Because we have separated ourselves from Ahlul Bayt. The sacrifice of Imam Husain AS
Yes.
is what gives the people of Palestine their strength. His sacrifice is what gives strength to all of those who rise up against oppression, even if they're not Muslim. You know, we've talked about Nelson Mandela. He himself said that he was ready to give up everything, to sign over everything to the government. You know, because he was imprisoned, tortured, all of these. And he said, I was ready. And then he said, then I remembered Imam Husain AS. And that gave him the strength. We have forgotten him. And not just forgotten him, we tolerate those who oppose him
Support his enemy.
and support those who came against him. You know, as we've talked about before, you know, Shaitan's job is not to make us ungrateful. He says, وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. That you will not, he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will not find most of them grateful. So he doesn't have to make us ungrateful, he just has to make us indifferent. And he succeeded. The true believer is grateful. And by not remembering Imam Husain AS, we are ungrateful to his sacrifice. And again, we don't even have to be outright ungrateful, just indifferent to his sacrifice. Like, oh, you know, it's not a big deal. It's just part of history. These are the same people, you know, who are the ones who now amongst the ummah are spreading this fitna of, oh, don't say alayhi salam. Because they don't want us to distinguish him. This is the mindset. I mean, you think about, you know, Shaitan's long-term planning. You know, and the British are prime examples of this. East India Trade Company made in the year 1600. They didn't complete their mission until 1857. 257 years. Long-term Shaitani planning. Dajjal planning. These people that spread these fitnas amongst the ummah tried to make the sacrifices of Ahlul Bayt insignificant or not worth mentioning, or try to separate us from Ahlul Bayt, which in reality they're separating us from the understanding of the Quran. Same thing, you look at their history and they are part of this same fitna. I'll end here today, unless there are any questions. No. So, inshallah, we'll continue next week and we'll start talking about his time in Makkah. Because Imam Husain AS will be in Makkah. Again, he leaves the 22nd, 22nd of Rajab is when Muawiyah passes away, Yazid becomes the king. The message arrived in Medina like 4 or 5 days later, So still Rajab. Imam Husain AS immediately leaves for Mecca. So he's there in Mecca. He will be there in Mecca. Basically, he arrives in Mecca Sha'ban, and then Ramadan, and then Shawwal, and Dhul Qa'dah, and he leaves Mecca on the 8th of Zilhajj. And so, so he's there like 4 months or so before he leaves. So we'll talk about that time, inshallah, next week. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our hearts with His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom He loves. May He give protection to our brothers and sisters in Palestine and Sudan and Kashmir and India, because all of India really is become a hotbed now, and everywhere the Muslims are being oppressed, which literally is everywhere, including those countries where people think, oh, we're safe, because the Muslims spiritually are being oppressed in Saudi and Kuwait and every place else. So may He give protection to us all and remove the oppressors, and may He accept all our actions during this month of Ramadan and allow us to make those connections with Himself, with His Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with Ahlul Bayt and the Sahaba and all of those whom they love. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum.